Is there objections to the motion? Hearing none, I recognize Senator from the 27th to speak to.
Good evening. One of the longest days of the Georgia legislative session is underway. Both chambers are voting on dozens of bills on this crossover day 2024. Welcome to our 1 hour lawmaker special on day 28 of the Georgia legislative session. I'm Donna Lowry in Atlanta. Crossover day is big because the bills you might care about either have a chance of becoming law or not, based on whether they get a favorable vote in either the House or the Senate. Throughout the hour, we'll keep you updated on legislation in each chamber. And we'll hear from legislators from both sides of the aisle on how they feel about some of the controversial legislation. Among the interviews coming up, I'll talk to Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones. Also in the studio, analysis from political insiders. So let's get started, as always, by getting the news so far today from our correspondent, Sarah Callis.
Hi, Donna. Today is crossover day at the Capitol, and both chambers are racing to get through as many bills as possible. The Senate is contemplating 58 bills and resolutions today. Surprisingly, a bill that would create a new license plate with the phrase America First was the day's first politicized debate.
This bill allows for another special license plate to be issued that'll display the image of the American flag. And let me show it to you so you'll know what we're looking at. This is the image of it. And the words America First will be written across the bottom of it. This represents patriotism. It's a commitment to prioritize the interests of the nation above all else and to reinforce a sense of national pride and unity.
A facetious amendment offered by Democrat Senator Josh McLaurin, which would replace the term America First with Donald Trump, caused some discord.
Would you be willing to work with the author on this new design after we pass your change? And would you be supportive of a second amendment to this bill that named it the Senator McLaurin license plate, recognizing President Trump?
Senator McLaurin, Donald Trump First would be the way.
No, I'm just saying we just name the bill after the good senator who brought the good amendment.
If you can get a Senator McLaurin bill that says Donald Trump First through the House, I'll go to the signing.
In the end, the amendment failed, but the bill will move to the House after a 34-19 vote. A bill and resolution that didn't warrant any debate, SB 512 and SR 616, dealt with increasing penalties for human trafficking and collecting more resources for trafficking victims.
The purpose of SB 512 and Senate Resolution 616 are simple: to eradicate the sexual exploitation of our children and vulnerable adults. If there are no buyers, there is no trafficking. These bills will make Georgia the toughest state in the country to be a trafficker, and these bills will take from those convicted of trafficking and put those dollars directly back in the hands of the victims to help them rebuild their lives and get the resources they need.
The resolution and the supporting bill will allow an amendment to the state constitution so that the state can use civil forfeiture of convicted traffickers to help fund resources for trafficking victims. Both legislations passed unanimously. And finally, a battle over books and the librarians who choose them. SB 390 would prohibit the use of state funds associated with the American Library Association's resources, grants, and accreditation.
Does this not give Georgia, doesn't it cast a pall over our reputation as a state committed to learning?
They're the ones that are trying to push a radical, socialist, extreme agenda to our local libraries. They're the ones that started this, not us. They're the ones that are going to lose membership.
The House has passed dozens of bills, and the votes are not slowing down as crossover day continues. The late Speaker David Ralston's legacy was honored through two measures. First, lawmakers passed a resolution naming a highway in Fannin County after Ralston. Then, the House unanimously passed House Bill 1409, which limits the liability of mental health care facilities.
All of the parity we impose and all of the funding mechanisms we adopt will all be for naught unless the mental health care service providers are here to provide the services that our citizens need. This bill is designed to address that issue.
Two people close to Ralston, including his son, came to the House to watch the tributes. The House also voted on changes to Georgia's film tax credit. Some changes include requirements for projects to staff crew from Georgia and film in rural areas.
Georgia's in the top 3 in the world we're competing against countries in film, and I think this makes sure that as the program exists today, that we will continue to dominate this field.
Not everyone was in support of the changes. Some members pushed back, saying the proposed cap on tax credits could hinder growth in the film industry.
You know, the great modern philosopher Jay-Z says, men lie, women lie, numbers do not lie. In 2007, right here in Georgia, the film and television industry was $300 million direct impact. Today, the film and television industry direct impact is $4 billion. It is my humble opinion that this bill, House Bill 1180, sends the wrong message to all businesses that Georgia's commitment is subject to change at any time without notice.
The bill passed 131 to 34. The House also approved a controversial bill that would require jails to report undocumented immigrants in their custody to federal immigration authorities and determine the nationality of all detainees. With both chambers still hard at work passing bills into the evening, I'll be here to speak with legislators live, coming up this hour. That's all for my Capitol Report. Donna, back to you.
Sarah, thank you for that wrap up of the day so far. And of course, we'll hear from Sarah at the Capitol, where all the action is taking place throughout the show. She'll have one-on-one interviews with key lawmakers, so stay tuned for that. For now, I want to bring in our guests for the evening in the studio. First, Martha Zoller. She's a columnist and media personality who hosts the Martha Zoller Show. She's also a former state director of field offices for Governor Brian Kemp, and she previously ran as a Republican for Congress. And Theron Johnson is a political strategist. He's the founder and CEO of Paramount Consulting Group. He's also a former senior advisor to the Biden-Harris campaign. He has served as senior advisor to several Democrats at the local, state, and national levels. Welcome to Lawmakers. We're going to have fun this hour, talking about a lot of things. It's one of those big days. So I just want to start with, you know, we've had a lot going on. The Senate alone had like 54 bills to get through today. Let's talk about what your observations are so far of the day.
Well, I thought it's gone a lot more smoothly than most crossover days that I've observed. Much of the lieutenant governor's agenda, especially on the Senate side, has already gotten through before today. One of the biggest things, the school choice bill, got through last year, so we're not seeing much. And I've gotten a lot of questions about that today because people expected to see something from it because they don't really know what crossover day is. But of course, we've got the RFRA bill that I certainly was watching, and then a lot of other pieces of legislation.
Yeah, we're going to talk about all of that. What are your observations so far today?
Well, I totally agree with Martha. I mean, we both were down there today for a good bit. And the thing that really to me was, as Martha talked about, is that there's a commitment to get these bills done. You always look at how fast the House side is moving versus the Senate side. As Martha talked about, Lieutenant Governor definitely wanted to make sure that he got his priorities out there. But there was a robust debate in the House, particularly around the immigration bill. But the one thing that I saw today, Donna, that made me so proud is that the governor brought everyone together, a lot of legislators, and talked about this amazing budget that he just passed. And Democrats, of course, we were able to poke some holes, and we want to expand Medicaid fully. But definitely, if you look at this budget and how they stood up there and its surplus that the governor and the lieutenant governor speaker talked about, definitely is a direct result of some fiscal spending, but also it was a lot of federal money that's come from the Biden administration post-COVID that I think has helped with the surplus in the budget.
Okay, you both have talked about a few things we're going to get into, and I do want to get into the immigration bill. Your thoughts on that passed in the House today?
You know, I think that I think it was the right thing to do. I think that it was in the works before the tragedy of Laken Riley's death, but I think that brought it home to make sure that we got more work done in this area. I think it acknowledges that the role really is at the federal government level, but also talks about what can we do at the state level. And there's a number of other bills that are not necessarily directly related to immigration, but things like Only Citizens Can Vote, which passed 100% bipartisan out of the committee. I don't know if it'll ultimately pass today, but I was looking at that.
Yeah, pretty heated discussion. It focuses on the law enforcement, basically, and their role when it comes to immigration.
Yeah, I mean, look, Houston Gaines from Athens is a very sort of well-respected young Republican in leadership, and he introduced this bill. And what you saw is that Democrats, in a very disciplined way, sort of raised some questions, not about what happened to Laken Riley. And I agree with Martha. My condolences go out to her family. I'm from Athens. That was a horrific murder committed by a suspect who definitely, is in this country illegally. So Democrats, we've got to be very bold and say, look, anyone who's here illegally, who is here to commit crimes and harm people, we don't accept that. But it really comes down, Donna, to what law enforcement has to say about this. I am consciously and patiently waiting to see what the Sheriff Association will say, because it's all around enforcement. How will local jurisdictions work with the state and the federal to enforce the laws if this bill were to pass both chambers?
Yeah, so we've got more to see. So that's the House. We'll see what happens in the Senate, but it appears that they'll be favorable to it. We're going to head back to the Gold Dome now, where Sarah Callis has one of the busiest committee chairs with her today and any day. He is the head of House Rules, Representative Butch Parrish of Swainsboro.
So, Chairman Parrish, this is your first session as Rules Chairman. How's the new job going?
Going very well. Thank goodness we have a great staff that's keeping us on track, and we sort of got thrown into the deep end of the pool early.
And I got to get my teeth together.
With the untimely passing of Richard Smith. So we're working to do that, but it's working along very well. I'm very happy about that.
And so, speaking of the passing of Richard Smith, has he influenced your role as Rules Chairman at all?
Oh, absolutely. I've served on Rules for a number of years, and I've known Richard. He was a good personal friend as well as a legislative friend, and he set a pretty high standard for all of us, and we're going to try our best to follow that and continue doing the good things he was doing.
So one of the bills that you sponsored, House Bill 1339, reforms the Certificate of Need process. And so that passed the House already, but how do you feel about its prospects in the Senate?
Well, I think they're going to look at it and take a good look, and hopefully they will work with us to keep it moving forward. That bill came out of a study committee that the Speaker had appointed that we served over the summer. We listened to people all over the state, giving us ideas about what was working, what we needed to tweak. We've done some of that. I think we passed some good things in there, and I hope our friends in the Senate will take it and go with it.
And so can you walk me through some of the key aspects of that bill?
Yeah, there's several things that are important. We heard that we wanted to streamline and loosen some of the restrictions as far as CON, and we did that. We removed expenditures on capital equipment. We made a pathway. If somebody wants to open a new hospital in a rural area, they can do that as long as they do certain things like become part of a teaching hospital, become part of the trauma unit, have an emergency area there in the hospital, and take indigent and Medicaid patients. And I think you're going to see that work well. And this is part of the program we've been doing for years to try to create more doctors, more healthcare providers in this state. That's a real priority with the Speaker, and it's been there for years, and with a lot of us too. And the House has really led the way on making that happen.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. Donna, back to you.
So we're going to talk now a little bit about the Certificate of Need, or CON. House Bill 1339 was passed not today, a few days ago. It loosened some of the restrictions on building hospitals in rural Georgia. Martha, a game changer?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, there's been this battle going on for several sessions about CON, whether we need it or not. I know that the Lieutenant Governor really wants to get rid of CON, but I think this was a good compromise here, and especially as it relates to the teaching hospital aspect of that, because our population is growing, not just in Georgia, but around the country, but the overall placements of residencies hasn't grown that much, but we saw some movement on that too with the addition of the University of Georgia Medical School that's going to be put forth. So I think this is moving all in the right direction. May not be fast enough for some people, but I think it's in the right direction.
Okay, so there was only one person who voted no to the bill, meaning Democrats favored it, and in past years that's been holding back CON passing. It seemed like a path that Republicans wanted, and that Democrats were focusing on Medicaid and kind of holding back a little bit because they thought maybe there could be exchange. We haven't seen anything on Medicaid, but they did favor this today.
Well, I'm a full supporter of fully expanding Medicaid in this state. You know, when I hear that lawmakers say, hey, we need another study committee, another study commission, what I would just advise them to do is look at the 40 states that have actually fully expanded Medicaid and how it's working. We're actually paying more money in the state of Georgia now for less services when we can actually be probably paying just as much money to fully expand Medicaid. But as far as CON, Donna, look, Martha hit on something that was very important. Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones was adamant that he didn't want CON this last year. I mean, when you guys were talking to lawmakers, he was a lieutenant governor who had pretty much put his foot down saying, hey, I don't want it. But having Chairman Butch Parrish, who's now the rules chairman with the unfortunate and sudden death of Richard Smith, push this bill, I think had a lot to do with the robust support it had in the House. Now, you're going to get into the details in the Senate. You're going to have some senators who are going to hear from hospitals, existing hospitals, and say, hey, look, we agree that CON needs to be streamlined. It needs to be enhanced. It needs to be updated. It hasn't been updated in a long time. But making sure that you protect those current hospitals and also give the opportunity for a streamline for new hospitals. But they got to follow the same rules. Everybody's got to have a level playing field. But I think we all can agree that we need more healthcare options in this state.
And I just want to add again about the adding of more options for more doctors with the medical school and having the rural hospitals tied into that, because if people come and do their residency in a rural hospital, they might stay there, and that's what they need. They don't need a doctor that's going to be there for a year or two. They need a doctor that's going to come there and want to stay.
But we got some good Medical College of Georgia hospitals right now that's doing a really good job. I know Martha's a UGA alum and she's pushing the UGA school. I'm not against it, but let's make sure that these operators, these hospitals that have been doing it for a long time, make sure they're protected as well. It's all about growth, but growing in the right direction.
Yeah, but the Democrats who voted for it today obviously see this as a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, look, Democrats, we've been very specific. We want to expand healthcare services for all Georgians in this state. And I think that it's what's in the bill. I think a lot of Democrats felt that Chairman Butch Parrish and others heard the Republicans and Democrats loud and clear last year and basically put some good things in the bill. But at the Senate, I think you'll see a lot more questions.
Do you agree that the Senate will have some more changes?
Oh, they definitely will. I mean, they will make some changes, and then they will come back again with a conference committee, a thing that the federal government should learn to do, too.
Okay. Right now, we're going to take a change, and we're going to head to the Capitol. But this time, we have Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones joining us. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Hi, Donna. I hope you're doing well. Wish you were down here with us. When they told me we weren't doing it in person, I was like, oh, disappointing.
I'll be back because you guys will be there a long time. You guys started with like more than 50 bills on your calendar in the Senate. How do you think it's been going today?
It's really been pretty smooth, Donna, to be honest with you. Most of the things that, as far as that we had as priorities, we've already passed over to the House earlier in the session. And so really what we were doing today was just trying to take care of individual senators, both Republican and Democrat. And we had very few really debated we had really no hotly debated issues, and most of the things that we passed were either almost unanimous or had a lot of bipartisan support. So today it's been a very smooth day. Don't know how much longer we're going to be. We're not going to get to all 57 of those bills, but we will probably take up a few more after you and I are done here, and then call it a night.
Okay, then. Well, I want to ask you about a few. And late in the day, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, SB 180, did pass. You've been in the General Assembly a long time, long enough to see this controversial issue come up before. Your thoughts about what happened today?
You know, it's a topic that the language mirrors what they do at the federal level, and it's something that was signed into law by President Bill Clinton back in the 90s. It used to be a hotly contested issue early. You're right. When I was a young senator, it used to be very hotly contested. It got very little debate, and you know, I mean, there were people against it, you know, but that was probably the only bill that we had where it was a party line vote on the final passage.
Yeah. The Senate also passed a bill to allow schools to sever financial ties with the American Library Association. Your thoughts on that legislation?
Well, that was brought forward by Senator Larry Walker, and that's something that he was very passionate about. He's out of Perry, Georgia. It's something that he had, it's in some of the curriculum or some of the readings that he was seeing from that association, bothered him, disturbed him a little bit, and he didn't think it was necessary to have ties to that association. So he passed that out today, and I think, and Larry, if you know Senator Walker, he's one of those is about as mild-mannered and subdued person as you want to be around. But he was very passionate about this, and so we supported him with it, and I think it's a good move on his part.
I want to ask you about your thoughts on the immigration legislation that passed in the House today in light of the tragic death of Laken Riley in Athens.
Right. Well, I didn't see the exact language that the House did today, but I will tell you this: we're going to come with some measures because this issue has been simmering for quite some time with these sanctuary cities and cities in Georgia not responding to laws that we're putting on the books, like Athens, Georgia has been doing. We have an invasion going on at the southern border. It's not an immigration issue. We have more than they say 8-9 million people who've come across the border. The truth of the matter is, Donna, they don't know how many people have come across the border. But what we are seeing because of that, the effects is we're seeing a increase in fentanyl drugs across the country. We're seeing crime increase, and we're also seeing a real issue with human trafficking. And so we're going to have to address those issues, and we're going to be very aggressive with cities like Athens who want to be safe havens for them, because I can tell you right now, those kids that go to University of Georgia, I went to the University of Georgia, they are the most important asset, and that's the reason why Athens is because of those kids that come to school there every year. And if we can't protect them from a situation that happened, like a situation that happened last week, then we don't need to be holding elective office. That was very disturbing, very disgusting that the mayor gave a response like he did to that incident, and that's something that they got a DA over there that will not prosecute criminals, and so this is something that has been festering for quite some time, and I think you've seen the boiling point, unfortunately, with the unforeseen and murder that took place last week in Athens.
I think this is something we're going to talk about in the coming weeks, of course. I do have a quick final question. How long do you think you're going to go in the Senate tonight?
I think we're probably going to have 7 or 8 more bills. So we're looking at I don't know what time it is. It's 7:20 right now. So we might get done a little, maybe 8 or 8:30, something like that. I don't think it's going to be a late night by any means, but and nothing controversial is coming up. I'm glad I heard Theron on there talking about reforming CON and providing better health care for people around the state, because that's something that we've been pushing for since last year, and we're hoping that's really what we're looking forward to, is getting into discussion with the House on some of these issues that are important to us in the Senate.
Yeah, so we'll definitely talk to you more on Lawmakers about that coming up. I want to thank you so much, sir, for taking the time to come on the show. Have a good night.
Always a pleasure, Donna. Good to be with you.
Thanks. So, from both of you, so you got called out here. I definitely heard what he was saying on this. So your thoughts on some of the things he talked about. So let's start with the Library Association. That bill, severing the ties with the Library Association. What are your thoughts on what happened over in the Senate today with that?
Well, first of all, the Lieutenant Governor called me out, and I want to thank him. I actually had lunch in his office today. Martha actually saw me down there, and I was hanging out.
He must have had something good. That's why you were there, right?
Yeah. Well, I didn't pay for the lunch, but we had a good lunch there. His staff was fantastic. They took good care of me. No, look, I think what you saw from Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones was a lieutenant governor that has really grown into this role and has a command of the issues. Donna, when he says there weren't a lot of controversial issues except the religious freedom issue that I think Senate Bill 180 that kind of snuck up on us. It came out of committee. But you did have a kind of robust debate between Senator McLaurin and Leader Gooch. But I think that, look, what he talked about was Larry Walker's passion. You know, he talked about how he spoke very specifically about this bill, and he's so well respected. I mean, he's been in the legislature for a very long time. And I think that the other thing that the Lieutenant Governor has found a way to do is to partner with strategically on Democrats, like Sonia Halpern, when it comes to historically black colleges and universities. But I think what what the Lieutenant Governor was also telling you, it may be a quick night tonight, but he was very, very reluctant to embrace the immigration bill while he did a really good job of showing, concern about what happened. But the only thing that really pauses me, and I have to say this is heavy on my heart. Martha's heard me talk about this. Again, this is a tragic death that happened. I mean, it was at the hands of a suspect who murdered this innocent student. But I just wish that legislators will have the same amount of urgency, the same amount of passion when we've had hundreds of deaths in the state of Georgia and this year alone, and 10 children that have died at the hands of gun violence. And I think that if you could come back with that same amount of enthusiasm, because a murder is a murder, right? No matter who does it, but to really put the effort forward, like we've seen from Republicans on this issue, to say, look, guys, we got to come back to the table around responsible gun ownership. We got to have a comprehensive law that basically doesn't take away a Second Amendment, but make sure that there's some guidelines and guardrails in place at a time where basically you don't even have to have a permit to have a gun in the state. I just think that, Democrats have got to figure out a way to counter what happened today. Now, I'm going to be very clear. I'm not against the bill. I think it's needed. It's all about what law enforcement can enforce. But I think that, the politicizing this issue, not all Republicans, some have done it. I just think that Democrats have got to come back and make sure that we stay very vocal on important issues like gun violence in the state.
Okay, Martha?
Look, and I hear what you're saying about that, but this is not just about whether Laken Riley was murdered. There's also been hundreds of fentanyl poisonings that have been a result of this illegal immigration that's been happening. And also, as I've pointed out before, what bothers me so much and what's been on my heart about this is that both a very strong Democratic president, President Obama, and a strong Republican president, President Trump, had the exact same laws that President Biden has. And they did a much better job managing the border than President Biden has. So the fact that he says, I can't do this or I can't do that or I have to have legislation just doesn't work. And this is why the Georgia legislature felt like they had to act. And one final comment. The president said today that, they wouldn't take this bill up in the Senate and it was Republicans' fault. They didn't even bring it to the floor to a vote. There is a bill that's been passed down the House side that could be brought up for a vote. So let's vote on these things and then get them to conference committee and then come up with a real thing. Don't negotiate behind closed doors. Get them to a vote and get out in a conference committee.
And now I would say this really quickly, Donna. I think that, look, there is a bill right now, and I think that the energy should be redirected. I mean, what the state legislators did today was great, but a lot of these members of Congress should go back to Washington and pass the bipartisan immigration reform bill that's right there now.
Or take up the one that's already been passed.
And Donald Trump instructed the Republican legislators not to do it. And I would say this, it is a crisis. I mean, he said it's an invasion. I said it's a crisis. But it's just a level of hypocrisy when you say that the president of the United States is not doing anything when he's done everything he could possibly do with his executive power, when we have a bill right now that Republicans refuse to vote on. And it's not a great bill. Some Latino leaders have told me that it doesn't go as far as they want it to go, but it's better than what the Republicans have presented.
There is a bill that the Republicans voted on that could be voted on or at least changed and go to conference committee. The only votes that have been taken, Theron, are on the House side. The Senate presented a bill, but they never voted on it.
I love this discussion. I love it. We could keep it going. Unfortunately, we got to get going. So we're going to keep things going after we have a break. So stay with us for this special crossover day special, 1 hour special for Lawmakers.
Lawmakers is made possible by Georgia Farm Bureau. With over 80 years of helping everyone understand the importance of agriculture in our state. After all, ag is Georgia's #1 industry. Food and fiber production represents over $74 billion in output of Georgia's strong economy. The Georgia Farm Bureau legislative team works to represent producers across Georgia at the state capitol during the session and year-round. Georgia Farm Bureau, the voice of Georgia farmers.
Welcome back to our 1 hour special crossover days. We have been rolling on a few issues today, and right now we're going to head back to the Gold Dome where Sarah Callis has Senator Bill Calzert. We We're not going to have that yet. He's coming. We know that, and so we'll go to Sarah. Let's talk about some of the other things that that the Lieutenant Governor talked about today. He obviously sees, he said today is going to wrap up, this evening's going to wrap up quickly. Mm-hmm. So they got a lot done. He's really looking forward now. I mean, I think this is one of those sessions where there was so much done before crossover day that this is, some of the steam, at least on the Senate side, has been taken out of everything.
I think Theron said that the Lieutenant Governor's grown into the job, and I think that you can really see that. But you also, it's hard to remember that John Burns is kind of in his second year too because of what happened with David Ralston's death. So the both of them are kind of growing into this job and getting to know the governor. They knew the governor before, of course, but in a different role. They're in a different role now. So they're all learning how to work together. And I really think this year has been good. Of course, it has helped that they've been able to do some big things, otherwise with the budget and that kind of thing. And that makes it a little easier. I mean, Terry England always said it's easy when you don't have much money because you just say no to everything.
I love that line that he has. We do now have Senator Bill Calzert of Athens with Sarah. So let's go back to the Gold Dome. Hey, Sarah.
So thank you, Senator Calzert, for being here.
Good to be here, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
So can you provide an update on the Special Committee for Investigations? You've been leading that this year.
Yeah, I'll be glad to. We had our organizational meeting a couple of weeks ago. Got all the committee members together, and we passed a set of rules that we'll be following during the course of our investigation. They were adopted unanimously, and it does give us the authority to subpoena witnesses for live testimony before the committee, to subpoena documents or tapes or recordings or other items of interest to the committee, and that we will be meeting on a periodic basis for the next few months. We expect to have a meeting next week and hope to receive some testimony perhaps. We have just issued a subpoena to Ashley Merchant, who you may have seen on the news, that has obtained quite a bit of information, and we'd like to see what information she may have obtained. And some of it people objected to and was maybe not admitted in the court proceeding, but may be relevant to us. Our mission is just to get to the truth, to find out what the facts are. And so we're going to go about that independently of the court system. So this will be our first step. But I would expect that we'll be having more people come testify before the committee, and we'll be subpoenaing additional documents as the investigation continues.
And so can we expect any legislation from this committee?
Hope so. That, of course, is our charge, is to investigate this, learn the facts, and then determine whether we need to amend any existing statutes or create new statutes to restore the public confidence in the criminal justice system. That's really what we're dealing with here. I mean, some of these just outrageous allegations and alleged misproprieties in conduct and perhaps financial improprieties really undermine the public's faith and confidence in the fairness and impartiality of the criminal justice system. And so if there are ways we can help restore that by making new laws or amending existing laws to make it clear where the guardrails are ethically, what's proper for a prosecutor to do. Can you hire your lover, pay them $750,000, and then benefit from that by taking trips around the world? The public doesn't seem to think so, and we will find out. Does the law really allow that? And if it does, should we change that law so that we can restore some confidence in the system?
And so your bill to legalize sports betting through a constitutional amendment passed the Senate this week. How do you feel about its prospects in the House?
I think it's pretty good. We had 41 senators out of 56 vote in favor of that bill. So that was a pretty overwhelming support, way above the 2/3 needed. And I feel like, it's the same type of people that are legislators in the House than are in the Senate, and we're all responding to the same constituent pressures or desires. And so I think it's very probable, but I hate to speculate on the House. We've done this before. 2 years ago, and the House didn't pass, so we'll just have to see if they can work the matters out over there.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us. Donna, back to you.
Thanks so much, Sarah. So let's talk about a few of the things that they discussed. Aaron, your thoughts on this, the Senate Special Committee on Investigations. It was formed to investigate Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis.
Well, you know, Chairman Couser is a good Athenian, another Athens guy, and known him for a long time. And I couldn't think of a person that I think will approach this honestly with a fair and sort of objective view. Now, of course, when he takes a little shot there at the end, whether or not you can hire your lover, and I think it was $653,000 over a 4-year period. I think that's just the senator being, you know, Senator Couser. But the fact of the matter is this, Donna. Look, I've said on many shows, the optics of this case is bad. It also questions judgment, whether it was before or after Nathan Wade was hired to serve as a special prosecutor. But we got to call balls and strikes on this show. Up until that point, which we found these allegations and a divorce filing, the case against former President Donald Trump was moving pretty smoothly. No one was questioning the District Attorney Fani Willis's ability to basically move this case forward. We had 19 defendants. I think roughly 3 or 4 of them had already pled guilty, and the trials were moving pretty fast. Then here comes this bombshell information that basically I think that the District Attorney has basically dealt with whether or not her personal relationship interfered in her ability to do her job. It's going to be left up to Judge McAfee to determine whether or not it's unlawful and should she be removed for this case. Now, what Chairman Couser's committee is doing, it's the right thing. He's got to look at conduct. Notice what he said. He said we're looking at current statutes and whether or not we need to change those statutes, and then they're going to continue to find the facts. So ultimately, look, I think that these state legislators, particularly the Republicans, and it's been some bipartisan committees too, they like to look at a lot of things that are going on, particularly around district attorneys. You know, we've had some other district attorneys in other areas do some bad things. And so I just hope that the senator, and I would just encourage him to stay objective, you know, whether or not somebody was a lover or not, is that a lawful, is that enough grounds to remove her from the case? And as far as sports betting, look, Senator Couser is a very, very convincing, persuasive senator. He'll get you in a room and he'll lock down on you. He'll basically, you know, try to convince you to be yes. But he said something very interesting. He doesn't know what the House is going to do. And you got to pay very close attention to the Democratic Minority Caucus, too. Because if you keep giving them these RFRA bills, immigration, vouchers, which we haven't talked about, will they choose to lock down on sports betting because they've done it before? But I'm a big proponent of sports betting. I think it should be passed. I think they've done some really good things about who's going to administer it, where the money's going to go, who's going to basically be recipients of the revenue generation that we think it will have an impact on the state.
Yeah, so let's start where he ended, and that has to do with sports betting a little bit.
On the sports betting, yeah, I think you got to see what the House is going to do, what they're going to put in it, what they'll put through. I mean, that's where the negotiation really happens. I am not opposed to sports betting, but what I do think is it's really hard to get across the finish line. But I do think the right thing, I think what Senator Couser did by putting it in so that the people vote on it was the right thing to do, okay? So we'll see how it all ends up. As far as the commission to investigate the district attorney, what I hear from my listeners, okay, is that they know about the JQC, which is kind of the oversight area for judiciary, where you can make complaints, where you can do things. I think that for a long time, and I started thinking about this after the Ahmaud Arbery case, I think there does need to be some kind of oversight for district attorneys where people have an opportunity outside of the ballot box to be able to investigate. So I think he's on the right track there. And I do think, hey, qualifying is in a week or so. Someone needs to qualify to run against her.
Yeah, it starts next week, so we'll see what happens. Right now, we're going to go back to the Capitol, where Sarah has Democratic Representative Syra Draper of Atlanta.
Thank you so much for being here with us tonight, Representative Draper. So you've been an outspoken critic of Senate Bill 221, which could end automatic voter registration. Could you explain why?
Yes, absolutely. So Senate Bill 221 does two things. It could end automatic voter registration in Georgia, and it would also make voter challenges, challenging the eligibility of voters, easier. So challenging the eligibility of voters is already very easy in Georgia. We passed a law in 2021 that said we can make unlimited voter challenges against voters, and that has led to thousands of meritless voter challenges being filed against Georgia voters. So with this bill, it would make it much easier than it is already, which is already very easy.
And so you also have a bill that aims to protect elections and poll workers. Could you talk to me a little bit about that one?
Yes. So in the last few years, we have seen a marked increase of intimidation, harassment against our election workers across the state. So what my bill would do is add an added layer of security to our election workers. It expands protections that already exist. It would also make their personal information confidential. So in the past, we've seen people asking for their home addresses, their phone numbers. There's no legitimate interest in folks getting this information except for harassment. So this bill would prevent against that.
All right, and we'll see what happens with that bill. Thank you so much for joining us. Donna, back to you at the studio.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Let's talk about it. Elections bills. We've had some go through. That we're expecting more, but your thoughts on what we've seen, especially the two that she discussed.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of Senate Bill 221. I mean, I don't think we need this. I think right now, after Senate Bill 202, we have elections in Georgia that are it's easy to vote and it's hard to cheat. And I think we've seen good results in the last several elections. So I don't support Senate Bill 221. As far as the other bill about intimidation, people should not be intimidated for basically volunteering. I mean, I think they get paid a little bit, but it's not very much. And with the turnover that we've had recently, because I'm all about people being involved in the process, okay? And I'm a little different than some of my colleagues on this, but I think that it ought to be easy for people to be involved. They shouldn't be afraid to be involved, because a lot of the older people that have worked in polls don't want to work in polls anymore because they've gotten older, and we need to bring in a new crop of people, and we need to make it easy for them to learn how to do it and to feel safe there. So, you know, that's where I am on those.
Okay, so we've had some that have passed. There's one that deals with watermarks on ballots. There's another that deals with the paper ballots, that they're accessible to the public after the election is over. And then there's also the automatic voter registration that passed in the Senate. So your thoughts on some of these elections bills?
I just think there's not a person in the legislature that cares more about voting than State Representative Syra Draper. I mean, this is a rock star freshman legislator who I had the honor of working with when she was the voter protection person at the Democratic Party of Georgia. And so I'm very happy to hear that my fellow friend Republican disagree with this bill. We've talked about it, because one of the things that Republicans have done in this state, and you got to give a big shout out to then former Governor Nathan Deal and also former Secretary of State Brian Kemp, when the whole automatic voter registration, motor voter, when you go and basically get your driver's license, you automatically become a registered voter. It's something that Republicans have been taunting for many years. And then when we started talking about suppression and people not going to vote in the polls, Republicans would be like, hold on, wait, look at all these people who are registering to vote. And so the thing is, to me, is that what's the real intent of the bill? Because there's already a verification process. You have to have a state issue ID. The other thing that I think is happening is that, look, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger knows that Georgia is going to continue to be on the national stage, right? We have we're voting right now. People are early voting for a presidential primary. We're not talking a lot about it because the turnout's been low. And so we cannot have another embarrassing year like we had in 2020 and also in 2022 and also the runoff in 2021, where people question the security and the integrity of the vote. And so I think you see some good bills coming through the legislature that wants to give that extra mile of security, say, hey, here's your paper ballot. We also can talk about QR codes where they're needed, and also the voting machines. And so I'm very happy to see Democrats and Republicans having a robust, open conversation that's transparent with Georgia voters about how people will vote in this state going forward.
Certainly robust. Your thoughts on the motor voter bill?
I think that motor voter is a good thing, but I don't believe it's automatic, is it there? And I think you have to say yes, you want to, but it's opt-in kind of thing. And I think that's the right thing.
And that
and because what had happened was, when it was automatic, is you had a whole bunch of people that really didn't want to vote that were getting in there. And by giving the opt-in, you ought to make one decision. I think that is a fair thing to say, that you have to opt in. I don't mind the watermark bill, actually, because I think that that's an extra level of security. So I don't mind that at all. I'm not in favor of paper ballots. I mean, overall paper ballots. Obviously, we have them with what comes out of the machines, and we have that. But the actual paper ballots, the old school ones, not in favor of that.
You touched on QR codes a little bit. Your feelings on that?
Well, it's a very tricky issue because, look, and Martha disagrees with paper ballot. I don't want to go back to the days of actually we use a paper ballot to vote. But when I go and vote and I'm actually using a machine, when I get that paper ballot to come out and I look at it and I insert it back hacking this, the machine myself. Again, it's just about making sure that I'm looking at the votes that I would cast. The QR code, look, it's a big question of whether or not technology is, working. But hey, guys, we're living in 2024. I mean, everything is on our devices. We're ordering stuff offline. And a lot of what we do now, you use QR codes to pay for things. And so, again, you got to continue to be transparent. But I think this, look, back to the opt-in thing, motor voter. You're right, you did have to opt in, it was automatic. And let's not forget, Martha, there was a point in time there was a glitch. We did not know, but months went on in the state of Georgia where people thought that they were automatically becoming registered voters, and it wasn't happening.
That's right.
And so I think for the political issue is that I believe Democrats, we win when more people are registered to vote, because we've shown that if turnout is high and we get the people out registered to vote, we actually can win in the state.
Well, and you're never going to have perfection in a system that is run by people. You're going to have things that happen. And the thing is that you need to be transparent about problems that people have, and you've got to have it out there and have an opportunity for them to adjudicate it.
Okay. Well, we're going to head back to the Capitol, and right now, Sarah has Democratic Senator Derek Mallow of Savannah with her.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us, Senator Mallow.
Thank you.
This morning, the Senate passed a bill that would sever ties with the American Library Association. Can you tell me a little bit about your thoughts on that bill?
I think it's extremely egregious that we want to sever ties with the American Library Association. Many librarians have reached out to us and with concerns about their certification through the American Library Association. And with the respect to what librarians do, they're extremely valuable in our state. And I don't think we should criminalize what librarians do and make it tougher where folks can find the opportunity to go get a book and learn about different things and cultures. It's extremely disheartening that my colleagues in the majority seem to disagree with that.
So another major piece of legislation that's passed this week is legalizing sports betting. So a lot of Senate Democrats seem to be in support of that. What are some of the reasons behind that support?
I think the reason the Senate Democratic Caucus is behind sports betting is we know that pre-K is still on the lottery in the state of Georgia, and there are many children that don't have an opportunity to enter pre-K. We know the studies have shown us the earlier that a child is educated and in the school system, the better off they'll be. And so we're behind sports betting because the first line item on the Constitutional Amendment will allow for the increased funding for pre-K to take pre-K off the lottery. And that's extremely important to us, and that is a priority of the Senate Democratic Caucus.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us. Donna, back to you with the studio.
Yeah, so thank you so much. Some of the things you talked about, your thoughts on it.
Well, I want to, full disclosure, I am the 9th District Representative of the State Board of Education. So just full disclosure on that. But I have an opinion on this. The ALA has a lot of issues, and I don't have a problem with this bill because what we've learned, I think, over time, and I'm not one of these people that don't trust organizations. This organization has got an agenda, and I think this bill is fine. As far as the sports betting goes, which I know we talked about before, it's good to see this, people talking about this and having the caucus behind it. So we'll see where it goes, and that'll be for education also.
The thing with the ALA, it is not just the schools, but we're talking libraries, government agencies. I mean, it's just across the board that they can decide, hey, no more. And mostly it's a financial thing, right?
It is financial, and I think that's what Senator Mallow, who's another good Democrat, represents the Savannah area. No, I'm just saying, he's, I said good things about Cowser too, and Burt Jones. I want to keep it going, Martha. I'm consistent. But no, I think, look, the senator was very passionate about ALA and how he felt like he said, I think it was egregious and they should be removed. But one quick thing on sports betting. Let's remind our viewers, it has to have a 2/3 majority vote in the House and the Senate. And so they got the Senate votes, but can you get 2/3 of the, so that means that you got to get all the Republicans and you got to get a fair number of Democrats, right? But you may not get all the Republicans to agree with it. Some of these rural Republicans back home are probably, for whatever reason, mostly religious, don't necessarily support gambling. And a lot of them actually, are very concerned about the negative impact, the stigma that comes around the addiction. And so Democrats and Republicans who support this bill, I want to be very clear, I am for it. I want to go on my device, Martha, and bet on the Falcons to go to the Super Bowl this year. But I can't do that legally in Georgia right now until this bill is passed.
Just do an office pool.
And then it's got to, then I think that, Chairman Cowser, who, again, a great Athenian, put it up to the voters because I think it gives the legislators cover to say, hey, we put it to the people, and if they want it, they should vote for it.
There's still tremendous pushback when it comes to this. So Moms Against Gambling, the Georgia Baptist Mission Board, all of them. So these next few weeks, we're going to hear from them. And this is typical. This isn't the first year we've been in this position after crossover.
Well, that's why I think it's probably 70-30 that it won't go all the way through, because that 2/3 threshold is a very high threshold to meet. But if it does, then it goes to a constitutional amendment, and the people vote on it. And if you recall, the lottery was a very close vote, and it was something that Zell Miller at the time put all of his political capital on, right? And look at how it's looked at as an institution now. So I am willing to go with the legislators on this. I believe in representative democracy, which is what we have, a republic, and we elect these people to make these decisions. They make the decisions, and then now we'll have an opportunity based on guidelines to vote on it. And then, or we can decide whether we want those folks in office again. And, like I said before, they're going to be qualifying next week. And if you're unhappy with what your legislator is doing, you should think about running for office.
So sports betting is all that if it goes through, that we're going to look at in terms of a constitutional amendment.
I think so, yes.
Yeah, so there's still a lot there. The one thing about it is it all goes to education, and that is one thing everybody seems to be happy about.
Pay very close attention to who gets the licenses. So I agree. I think our 4 sports teams here should definitely have a license. But you got other companies like FanDuel, Prize Picks, all these different entities. Pay very close attention to how many licenses are in the bill and who gets their licenses. That's where it broke down 2 years ago. And then also,
and the lobbyists are lobbying for that now.
And I'm a registered lobbyist, and if horse racing come back and casino gambling, that can muddy up things as well.
Right, but we're talking all the sports teams. I just realized that Augusta would be in terms of they would be eligible for it, and down with the racing down in Hampton and all. So it'll run the gamut. I didn't realize that. I was thinking more of basketball and football a whole bit. You can tell I have a lot to know. I know a lot about gambling.
I think you can bet on anything.
Yeah, I think we can. Let's talk about something you touched on a little bit earlier. You touched on Medicaid. Did you think we'd see something with Medicaid this session?
I thought it was more likely this session than it ever has been. Yeah. I think, as with anything, it takes time for things to go on. I think after the pandemic, even Republicans are looking at this and going, maybe there ought to be something there that we expand. I'm not in favor of expanding Medicaid yet because I'm still concerned about the funding. I'm looking very closely at the Arkansas model, what's been done in Arkansas, because that seems like to be kind of a way to kind of meet halfway on it and get some of the money. But I get very concerned about the funding. I know federal government funds everything forever. We're still spending at COVID levels, even though we haven't had COVID in 3 years. But I'm concerned about the funding, so I'm not there yet.
Yeah, so what I hear is that we're just going to see how things go for another year, and we may see
and look
things
closely
come
at the
up next year.
Arkansas model.
Okay.
I think Governor Sanders has done a great job.
Okay, well, we're going to go back to the Capitol right now. Sarah Callis has another guest. It's House Minority Caucus Whip Sam Park of Lawrenceville.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here with us, Representative Park.
Thank you for having me.
So just to start off, we've seen several bills this session dealing with immigration. And so one of those that the House passed today would require jails to report the immigration status of detainees. Can you tell me your thoughts on this bill?
Sure. So the bill would do a lot more than just require the immigration status of detainees. One of the very concerning aspects of this is that it would mandate this program called 287G statewide, in which we saw this implemented in other jurisdictions previously. This has literally torn apart families here in Georgia. And so it's very, very, it's a bad bill. It's very concerning. So we'll see how the bill continues to proceed. I'd also mention that same bill, it would defund local law enforcement officers, defund the police, and potentially criminalize law enforcement officers. So again, I think HB 1105, it's a very dangerous piece of legislation that unfortunately the Georgia House passed earlier today.
And so staying on this immigration topic, there was another bill that would prevent some people from different countries from purchasing farmland in Georgia. Can you tell me a little bit about your feelings on that bill?
Yes, so that's House Bill 1093. This is, again, another dangerous, discriminatory piece of legislation. Only one state in the country has passed and enacted this piece of legislation, which is the state of Florida. That bill was enjoined by the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals for violating the United States Constitution, in that, one, it was preempted by federal law, but two, it violated violates the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause that prohibits discrimination. And so, unfortunately, again, it seems like it's good politics for the majority party, the Republican Party, to pass legislation that would end up discriminating against immigrant communities and American citizens of Asian and Hispanic descent.
Well, thank you so much for being here with us, Representative Park. Donna, back to you at the studio.
Thank you so much, Sarah. We're wrapping up, but I want to talk about a few things. And next week, qualifying begins. So with Monday through Friday of next week, we're going to see some interesting things. We've had some people announce that they're retiring. Plus, it's an election year for everybody. So what are you thinking the next few weeks?
It's election year for everybody, but oddly enough, we don't have any statewide races with the exception of the presidential, or unless they settle the PSC situation very quickly. Yeah. Okay, and so I think that will drive some things because you'll have congressional races, you'll have state races. I mean, Theron's really the expert on this kind of stuff, on what drives what, but I'm a little concerned about turnout, and I'm a little concerned about, kind of the excitement behind candidates, because that top of the ticket has to drive excitement. There's not that much at the top. There's the presidential, but there's no statewide races. And I think that's important. But what I always remind people, they don't care that much about their school board or their county commission. Yeah. And that's where your money is actually spent. So I always remind people, don't forget about those local races. Yeah. It's fun to talk about presidential all the time, but don't forget about those local races. And if you're thinking about running, that's a great place to start.
And we have some sheriff's races, we have some district attorneys races, those kinds of things. What are you thinking?
Well, you mentioned retirement, and I got to take a few seconds to just, give my best. And I'm very saddened that our minority leader, Gloria Butler, announced this year that she's going to retire. This was the first woman of color in a leadership position in the Senate in the Senate caucus period. And so definitely she's a dear friend. She's going to be missed. But as Martha talked about, look, if you're a legislator right now, you're watching to see if anyone is going to qualify against you, right? And then also keep in mind, legislators, they can't raise money during the legislative session. And so I think you're going to see some surprises on both sides. And pay very close attention. I know this is a statewide show. Middle Georgia and Southeast Georgia is the battleground. There are some seats that Democrats can pick up, and there's some seats in Gwinnett County I think Republicans think that they can be competitive in as well. And so you're going to look at the caliber of the candidates, the quantity of the candidates who are going to be qualifying as well. And then also, if you're a sitting legislator, you just want to make it to that Friday if you can and not have anybody oppose you. And that's why I think that, I love being down at the Capitol and seeing everyone come in. But I agree with Martha. Look, I'm very concerned about the apathy, the lack of enthusiasm on both sides and when it comes to voting. So I think that we're going to have some really good candidates. And it's left up to us and you, Donna, who do a great job on the show to inform people about the issues, but also make sure they go out and vote.
And I loved in your interview with Gloria Butler, it's no fun to be in the minority. I love that.
Wasn't that a great line? I mean,
I tweeted it out.
I think people, didn't realize that she might feel that way, but yeah. Well, I really appreciate you both coming on the show today. This was fun. We didn't even get a chance to talk about the bingo card that the AJC reporters put together, but that brought some levity to the day. But that does it for Lawmakers today. Keep up with the latest on the rest of Crossover Day on GPB, on all the social media. And Sarah Callis and I will be there the rest of the evening and back on Monday. So in the meantime, have a good night.